is that Eric playing music or are we playing rock music on the intro? I'm confused. So either way, welcome to the Late Slate Sweat and Swap show. If we are playing rock music here, a bit of a different flavor, but that's what the Late Slate show is all about. Getting a little bit different here before we talk about this 2-game slate coming up for the night. But I am Chris Spags, joined once again by a man you've seen on countless hours over this channel over the last few days, but he's going to be adding a lot of value to this show in particular with the swaptimizing, with the Late Slate calls. He's Eric Lindquist. How are you doing, Eric?
Chris, that was me. That was my iPad. I wanted to jump in the chat. I'm going to take full ownership right off the bat. That was not you. That was not anything you did. That was all me. Not Spags. Other Chris, our man behind the glass. Love this guy. He's been a great addition to our Awesemo team so far. I've known him for 2 weeks, so this is great. I'm going to stop talking now. How are you doing, Spags?
I'm feeling good. We were talking before the show, and as we always do on this show, try to set up some of the main slate stuff. But actually, first of all, first order of business, smash the like button, guys. We got 82 people in here. That number is going to come up throughout the course of this hour, but we need your support now more than ever. This Late Slate show, we're doing it 5 days a week, and also trying some different formats where we were doing earlier this week the 2-game Late Slate plus the showdown, and trying to figure out how to make that all work as best as possible to give you guys the information that you expect from the Awesemo YouTube channel. So smash the like button and also subscribe to the channel. Check out all the content we have going on. And I feel like for me, the main slate, Eric, is really coming down right now to, A, that's the main part of my happiness. And B, the thing that you apparently need more than ever is Keldon Johnson in your life, which I think this game to me, and we could talk about sort of the variability of all these things and the process for DFS. But this Keldon Johnson game to me, Eric, seems like the TJ McConnell game where him putting up 11 rebounds in the first half, looking like a completely different player than he's looked like since he came off the COVID list. I don't get it. I don't know what's happening, but do you ever expect it to happen again, Eric?
Yeah, I do, because it's a rookie and we don't really have any idea what it's going to be. I just didn't see it against Cleveland in a spot. Obviously, DeMar DeRozan exists. This is just kind of one of those strange situations. It's almost like that 10 steal game with TJ McConnell. Oh my God. Now that I said TJ McConnell, he's at 31.1. TJ McConnell is 31.1. What a sign of the times to just have some of these randos that just absolutely go off in this spot. Obviously, I think people expected Andrew Wiggins, Kyrie Irving. That's no shock. Jaylen Brown continually carrying the position at small forward. Aaron Gordon, I've never gotten right in my life. So it's nice to be on the right side of variance for the first time ever. But good Lord, Keldon Johnson. It's a strange guy to have hit in this spot, but hey, he's a rookie. I guess we don't have like an entire years of history to be able to go back and say this is who he is. So new situation, new team compared to anything, just as a rookie. So congratulations, Keldon Johnson, on winning somebody a lot of money tonight.
He also has been in the league since 2019. I feel like I was letting you say it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to say, my brain was saying rookie. He's just like a newer dude in general. I didn't know who he was.
This is his first time in the spotlight, but yeah, like
go.
But he was on the team last year and I think had 1 or 2 good games, but definitely nothing. Actually, he had one game, I think, that was to this sort of level where he had a bunch of rebounds and I think knocked down an ungodly amount of threes in one game. But you're right, like this kind of ceiling and not there that often for Keldon Johnson, but looks like a crucial play. And Andrew Wiggins, this one is one that we were talking about before we came on the air as well. And Andrew Wiggins is a guy who people maybe downgraded because of the ownership. I know on Live Before Lock, I heard you guys talking about that play and the idea of, Wiggins maybe being a bit overowned because of the fact that he was going to be so high owned on the assumption that Kelly Oubre wasn't in. Kelly Oubre came in, and now Wiggins is having a day that's arguably better than you could have possibly imagined, whether Oubre were in or out. And where'd you land with him? Because I know you and Terry on the Live Before Lock show were maybe trying to find ways to shave off some ownership, but it looks like Wiggins might now be a crucial play on both sides.
I'm not going to even look at my DraftKings because it would make me sad at the moment. But on FanDuel, yeah, I got to enough that I'm okay with it. I didn't get to 75% like you, which is a big number, and I'm very proud of you and couldn't be happier. But yeah, I ended up just a little bit below that. I'm fine with it. Like he's not somebody who's going to go out and win you a slate the way Keldon Johnson is just because of an ownership perspective. But you're definitely not kicking yourself if you rostered a bunch of Andrew Wiggins today.
And the other big disappointment I feel like we have to talk about, and the day is not over here, as we always talk about in DFS. You could sometimes get tilted a little too early, but an 11.75 DK points showing from James Harden, comparably bad on FanDuel. This is one play to me that is going to be extremely painful on both sides. I had over 50% Harden on FanDuel, had a good amount on DraftKings too. I don't have that number in front of me right now, but how did you land with Harden today in a spot where normally he's so great and really reliable every day that Kevin Durant's been out, especially with Kyrie Irving out out in the past. Kyrie Irving back in today. Kyrie's having a good day now, Eric, and James Harden is not. So how are you feeling about that player? Did it not affect you at all?
Well, it affected me. We did the super draft afterwards, and I got on some Kyrie Irving there, made a couple lineups in that $7, and at least have some Kyrie Irving exposure of some kind. I think I ended up like with 8% over on FanDuel out of my 50 lineups. So I'll be okay with that for the most part. Like that's going to be fine in the long run. The problem is that I do have 70% James Harden on FanDuel. It felt really, really hard to get away from. I really liked getting up for that ceiling. He was my favorite spend off on both sites. I'm not going to even look at DraftKings because that's not what I'm here for. I want to keep the mood light. We're going to try to go light with this today. And James Harden exposure, not a funny topic right now.
Now, James Harden, a big disappointment thus far. And actually, I think I might have had an obscene amount on DraftKings too. So I'm hoping he gets it together in the second half. The thing with Harden is like, I really assume that his floor is 50 fantasy points and that I still feel like there's got to be some way that happens in the second half. But this is just, I'm definitely sweating the concept of him getting to 50 today with this mediocre first half. So that's the less said, the better. Any other thoughts, Eric, on this main slate and I guess how it could relate to the swap demising and things you could do? Because maybe people have some roster spots left if people are chasing in particular the Anthony Edwards or Karl Anthony Towns games yesterday, or if you have a lot of Luka. So just give me your overall thoughts about the main slate vis-a-vis the concept of swap demising now.
If you think Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards, as a Timberwolves fan, if you think they're going to repeat what they did yesterday, I have some oceanfront property out in Arizona that you need to get your hands on right now. It is, it's just not going to happen. It's not a spot that I'm going back to the way that I think some of the public numbers were going to. I think that was a great play at 1.25x on fantasy draft, but for this late slate, he's going to be a point of emphasis. He's going to be somebody that I'm going to be on, but over for a 10-game slate, going up against the Suns is not a team that I want to pick on twice in a row. Teams make adjustments too. Like we can't just for some of these home and home games, I feel like people just expect the same situation that, a player played well yesterday, they're going to play well again today. It's the same thing that we talk about on not point chasing, not doing some of these other things, getting on a play that might be a little bit lower owned because they just got done burning everybody the game before. So this is kind of a prime situation for me where the way that I play DFS, I just went lighter on those two. I knew I was going to be way, 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 way lighter on those two than everybody else in the field was for the public perspective.
Yeah, I think Towns projects well. And yesterday, I did think he was under the cusp of usability for how I would view him, but the salaries come down a little. I think it's tempting to go back to Towns for the late slate, but I agree. Like for the main slate itself, I think he's going to be a little bit overowned. We had him at 12% on DraftKings before the slate locked, so hopefully it'll be around that number. But I think Towns, to me, it just feels like a spot that they had their best possible game yesterday. Maybe it's a sign of the T-Wolves team that could come. They have a new coach who's been certainly changing things around a little bit rotationally and all that. But I agree with you. I just don't know. Like Phoenix after that loss, that was kind of an embarrassing loss. And I feel like today in particular, you have to assume that Booker and Paul and Ayton too had really the worst game out of all of them yesterday. These guys come out a little more motivated because that was an embarrassing one. The spread is up a point higher today too. It's now 11 points favoring Phoenix. I believe yesterday it was around 10.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Everything is correct in terms of the spread makes sense. Everything makes sense. What doesn't make sense is that I would want to try to recreate the magic. I missed out on it. I missed the boat. I have to accept that they both had their ceiling games, that there were two of the three highest raw point total players on FanDuel. And I can't chase that. I'm not going to go back to the well.
And we got some questions about Jacob actually just pointing out how bad the late slate is on FanDuel. And we'll talk about some of the ownership stuff here. Yes, it seems not great, but guys, smash the like button right now. You guys know if I'm on a Lie Before Lock or one of its spinoff shows like this Late Slate show, I'm giving you a little bit of money time, a little taste of money time. And our old pal Josh Engelman, apparently based on the schedule we got today, courtesy of our producer Chris, who also heads up some of our content operations, Josh will be getting that money blazer right in his face on Monday's show. So if you want to see a man dressed like an asshole to slightly annoy another man, feel free to tune into Lie Before Lock then. But today, I feel like, guys, hit the like button as much as you can. We got 183 people on here. If we got to 100 likes, that'd be awesome. But we'll give you guys the ownership projections for the late slate on DraftKings and FanDuel, top 5 owned plays for DraftKings and FanDuel, and also the showdown too. There is a Portland Dallas showdown. So we'll give you guys the top 5 on there as well. So hit that like button now, and we'll get to those in 20 minutes or so. I guess for Minnesota, Eric, how are you feeling about the ownership on the late slate itself? Because we talked about it vis-a-vis the main slate. And on the late slate, we are seeing Towns, I think, outside the cusp right now of being a top 5 owned play, but still going to be the chalkiest center, it seems. DeAndre Ayton not terribly far behind. But how much Towns is too much Towns for you on the late slate, where people are going to see this exact same game happen yesterday and definitely chase that? And I think the ownership here honestly might be light at 44%.
I agree. So this is why it is so beneficial to be playing some of these night slates. This is an opportunity to capitalize on a good play, to capitalize on somebody. It's not like I wouldn't like Towns today. It's simply that he's going to go much, much more represented on a slate like this than what he did yesterday, even on a 6-gamer. And now you get 10 games in the mix. It just was a spot that I wanted to be light on because the ownership got there. On the late slate, it makes complete sense to go to somebody with this kind of a ceiling. 9,400 over on DraftKings. Yeah, 44% is a low number over there. On FanDuel, where you're only playing the one center, I think his ownership makes even less sense to me to have 53.1%. Like, there isn't that big of an issue. Like, I guess there are multiple studs that you want to get to in some capacity. Well, 2 basically, but I kind of am feeling at center, he's just such a better play compared to the other pieces that are listed there, that I kind of want to get most of him on FanDuel, and then DraftKings, no problem getting over the field there too.
Yeah, I agree. I think for the late slate, he seems a bit more unavoidable, and you can always avoid somebody even on a 2-game slate. But I think with the center position, it's definitely Towns and a decent stretch here. And you have to hope that that Minnesota doesn't get too high after that win yesterday, which it does seem unlikely to happen again. But if they keep it close, I think Towns going to have a hard way, find it hard to really not get to his floor projection at the very least.
If John Morant just tried to dunk on Draymond Green in a way that was very, very aggressive, it would have been the greatest Top Shot moment in the history of basketball if he had converted it. I'm going to send this to you on Twitter. Take a look at this. Oh my Lord, this is incredible. That's all.
I'm curious. John Morant does tend to take things personally. The beef he had with James Harden in the game a little while ago. I'm watching the clip right now.
I want to watch your live reaction.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
You got to hit it though, but I mean, still for an attempt, that was a violent one.
If that had gone down, that would have been better than the Anthony Edwards dunk on Yuta Watanabe for sure.
One guy too, I feel like is a guy to watch for dunking on people with some degree of malice, and maybe he's not going to get as much run with Houston getting a little bit healthier, but Kenyon Martin Jr. is just a vicious dude. Like, he goes for every block possible, has no issue getting near posterization on those, but sends it right back on the other way too, where if you're going to try to put up a shot on him, he's going to try to dunk on you really hard. So that's one guy I would watch too for future nutmegging and embarrassing dunks that could go on. Let's talk more FanDuel here, because I'm going through some of the ownership positions here. And again, we'll give you guys some of the ownership previews here coming up in 15 minutes. But the ownership for this slate, DeAndre Ayton a little bit further behind. You mentioned that center with Karl-Anthony Towns. And Ayton was really, as I mentioned earlier, the one disappointment for Phoenix yesterday. This price, I still think, looks pretty good. I ended up with a lot more cancer than Ayton yesterday on FanDuel, and that ended up being the right play. But today, I feel like Ayton is kind of appealing to me, coming off the down spot, coming off the bit of a disappointment. His minutes also got out of hand there, I think, mostly because of Dario Saric. I think in this spot, I think going back to Ayton makes a lot of sense, both on DraftKings and FanDuel. But how are you feeling about it, Eric? Do you think that he's worth it, or is he still a bit overowned?
So I think it's kind of fun that him and Canner are the exact same price. First of all, I'm just going to write off every other center. There are 3 centers on this FanDuel slate. Like, there's no way that you can convince me to play Dwight Powell in this spot. I know that there's a lot of people that are out, that there could be some kind of a argument to be made there. Naz Reid would be a play that you're basically plugging in if you expect a blowout, and he would just give you a different lineup construction where you're jamming Lillard, jamming whomever else you would want, or excuse me, you're jamming Lillard and Doncic up against each other. But yeah, that top end, DeAndre Ayton and Cantor, between the two of them, DeAndre Ayton has been a 7K plus guy for so long. He's going to turn it on eventually. Saric has been playing really, really well in the backup spot. And I think Adam made a point, I can't remember how many days ago it was, but he talked about how Saric would go out there, put the burners on, and they just wouldn't bring Ayton out because there was no reason. Saric was playing so well. I agree with that, but also 6K is so low. And comparing it to Canner, who has such large, he has just such a large range of outcomes because they can go small with Covington, because McCollum comes back in and is able to kind of eat up some of that usage. There is an absolute floor that exists on Canner that even if he's going to identify like as the exact same ownership as Ayton, which is what it is right now, I'm going to definitely go the Ayton side of it too.
I think Ayton too, it may have been foul trouble costing him a few minutes here because he had two fouls on his first shift yesterday. Because I had assumed that it was just that Sarge was playing well because Ayton did foul out at the end of the game, but during it didn't seem like he meaningfully lost minutes. But he actually did lose. He had two fouls on his first shift. Then he got taken out with 1 minute left in the half, which I don't think was foul related. Then the second half, though, he had picked up two fouls within the first 6 minutes of the half. It was mostly ineffective, but I just feel like Ayton's minutes here maybe look a little bit worse, not so much because of Sarge being good, but because of the fact that he was, getting close to foul issues. And it just logically doesn't make the most sense to me that you would have Ayton playing less minutes going against Towns, given that like the whole size thing of Towns, like he was abusing, I think, Sarge for the most part in the court time they shared yesterday. So I expect Ayton to get a little bit more today.
I also think Sarge isn't exactly the most fleet of foot. And Sarge, there were a couple closeouts that he was so slow on. Like Cat was knocking down threes on the perimeter. You could just see that on the Sports Center highlights coming through. Like it was just three ball. And it was just always in Sarge's grill. So I expect Ayton to continue to be the guy there. He's going to get the bulk end of the five. There's no issue with that. So at the exact same number as Kenner, at the exact same ownership, give me Ayton pretty much every single time.
Let's see here. We got a question from Rated R Superstar in the YouTube chat. We'll take some questions and also the premium Slack that's got the first priority. So if you have any questions in there, feel free to drop them in and tag me if you can, so I can make sure to see it. Rated R Superstar asking, avoid Sarge and Anson, I presume he means Ayton, in the same lineup on a two-gamer. I think that seems reasonable. I think especially with the price of Sarge coming up enough where I don't have him projected to be too great of a value, I would be... If you're getting them a lot, especially, I normally wouldn't make groups for a night slate because you just kind of got to take what you can get for the most part. But I think that might be one that I would be curious to see because they are going to pull directly on each other's minutes. But Eric, how do you feel about that? Would you want to group Ayton and Sarge away from each other, or are you okay with it?
This is a fantastic question because it's going to send me on a rant, and I'm excited because, or it's actually not a rant. It's going to send me on just a long soliloquy, if you will. I feel as though, first of all, the answer is no. I'm not going to make a group ever in this kind of a situation. And here's why. There aren't other options above or below that are going to grade out significantly better than Sarge in a lot of ways. Like you look at Crowder and Kleber. Kleber is my favorite 3,800 guy on FanDuel. So I have no problem getting to him there. It's a question of what is the field going to do? Is the field going to be selective enough on a two-game slate to remove them? Because in an optimal world, yes, you absolutely would make the group. But is the ownership of which the two are going to overlap? If there's enough sharp people that are putting 150 lineups in and making groups for this kind of a situation, I bet that you're not going to see as much overlap that exists between the two. And therefore, there is more than likely a path where they could be together. Now, the other part of that is the field going to not make that kind of a decision? Are they going to just randomize or do something in some kind of a way where they're going to plug a lot of Sarge and Ayton into the lineups? Sure, I bet there's enough people who do that. But because the price is so low on it, I don't think it's some crazy outcome that Sarge is going to beat the other pieces that are at his exact same price range. Like Sarge beating Crowder or Kleber in 20 minutes would not shock me whatsoever. It just wouldn't. And so therefore, at the ownership, like the ownership kind of becomes a little bit of the tiebreaker. And so I'm going to pull that up here, but I'm not going to do it in a lot of situations because even if they were direct pivots for each other, it is a 2-game slate. And I have no problem getting to two people who can get buckets in a hurry. Yeah, maybe Sarge gets a little extended run if he plays well, and that might hurt Ayton's, on production slightly. But Ayton still at that price point is a better play than Cantor to me because I know the path that Cantor gets off the floor, and that's just playing no defense in general against Porzingis.
I think those are fair points, and I could see where you're going with it too. I mean, I think I'd be a little more inclined to play, and I agree that there is a sort of sometimes a penchant or a desire by, I know the questions that we get from people are probably over grouping things where I know that there are sharp players who use groups, and I know Adam talks about groups sometimes where he's just trying to carve out little bits of edge between guys who are going to be competing for court time or guys who directly pull away from each other. But for the most part, I do tend to be less groups are better and on that page. I think the one thing for me though is that to me, the pathway for Ayton and Sarge to both get there is that this is probably a Phoenix blowout, and it's probably a game where you're getting, good run for Ayton, really productive run for Ayton, but you're probably getting less successful run or less efficient run for guys like Booker and Chris Paul, or definitely Booker. So I think I might be more inclined to play him. Like, this is sort of where I come in with, capping the amount of guys or max exposure for a team, where I normally cap it at 3, but I feel like if you had 2 Suns besides, and they happen to be Ayton and Sarge, like, I don't know that I love that if you have them with Booker, but if you have them by themselves, like, I think that makes a bit more sense, because it's really the only way they're going to be productive is if these guys are just having really outlier days that pull away from a guy like Booker.
But I get that too. And so I think we're kind of making somewhat of the same argument while having different takes on it. Like, I feel as though, I am acknowledging the fact that they are negatively correlated. Like, I'm acknowledging that, but I'm also acknowledging that the other plays that exist at 3,800, be it Crowder, be it who else would you even like obviously Kleber, who is my favorite play of that position. And I would want to get over top of the field at 30%, but like Crowder specifically isn't like a huge fantasy point per minute guy. Sarge kind of trumps them. So in 18, 20 minutes, I would still probably take the raw number of whatever I'm going to get from Sarge, as opposed to, like, I know who Crowder is. So him being the most owned of the 3, even minutely, seems crazy to me, just because he has to knock down threes and get a couple stocks in order to like really surpass Sarge, who can get closer to a fantasy point per minute.
Okay. I think I get where you're going with it. And I could see the logic too, where Crowder, I think, does project really well based on a median projection, but is also sharing his court time with the aforementioned Booker, with the aforementioned Chris Paul and Ayton, and even Mikal Bridges. So I think that there's a bit of more logic in Sarge. I think you can make the case to me going to Sarge over Crowder a bit more than pairing Ayton and Sarge. But I think we are sort of talking about the same thing, but in different ways. And ultimately, you are trying to just carve out a certain amount of guys, I think, that can get there against Minnesota. And it is a very high combined total. So there is a pathway for multiple guys to get there. I just would be careful about which guys you're pairing together, especially, at volume. Let's talk about Maxi Cleaver more, because you mentioned him, and he's going to come up in the ownership projections, which, again, we're giving away the top 5 for free on DraftKings and FanDuel here in about 7 minutes, and a special time we call money time. So even though we have a very nice 69 likes right now, we have 250 people in here. I feel like you guys can get us to 100 likes. So show us a little love, get us to 100 likes, and we'll give you guys a top 5 owned plays for both the night slate and the showdown/single game slate coming up in 7 minutes. But I'm with you on Cleaver. Cleaver is a guy that I have a ton of today for the main slate, particularly on FanDuel. I think the price looks good. Last game, he played over 40 minutes against the Clippers, and we are seeing, again, no Willie Cauley-Stein today, which is a change from that last game too. And maybe he opens up some more minutes for Dwight Powell, some more minutes for Boban Marjanovic, even potentially. We'll see if that ends up being one of those days. But I like this spot for Kleber, at least in terms of getting run. He has been horribly unproductive on the year, 0.71 fantasy points per minute, but the projection looks pretty solid. I'm with you. I think Kleber looks good, but how much Kleber is too much, I guess, would be the question, both for how much I have on the main slate, which is almost 50%, and how much is it for the night slate?
Well, 101% means you cheated, so probably 101% would be too much. I'm happy to get to a ton. He's one of my highest owned power forwards on the main slate. He's absolutely on the late slate. I'm going to be right there again. He's going to be, other than Porzingis, my second highest owned power forward, I believe, at that position. Here's what it comes down to, and it's not just Willie Cauley-Stein, because I think he's probably the least important of the 3 guys who are out. James Johnson's also out. Who could eat up a couple minutes here and there. The real big one for me is DFS. Dorian Finney-Smith is out. So as long as he remains out, Kleber is a guy who's proven multi-positionality on the Mavericks. They've been able to play him at a 3. They've been able to play him at a 5. They've had small ball lineups with him. They've had big lineups where he kind of slots over and can guard multiple positions. But Kleber is a guy who I'm projecting for 36 minutes, and you give me 36 minutes over just about anybody else in that range. Again, for me, Saric would be the priority even over Crowder, because I expect Crowder to be higher owned in pretty much any place that you're looking at. I'm very excited about Kleber's perspective. I would swap onto it if you don't have any on the main slate. If you have dead lineups or something, he's just such a better play than what I think the public has been perceiving him as all day long. Somebody who you can't replicate 36 minutes of court time just about anywhere else on this slate. So sign me up for as much of him as possible.
Yeah, I agree. The price point is almost too tempting, I think, especially on FanDuel. Though on DraftKings, too, still 4,200 for both the main slate and the night slate. And I think in this spot, I like Kleber enough to get there. And, it just seems to me, too, like he's going to have better days. Like he's always been a pretty competent shooter this year. His true shooting numbers are still pretty high. All it takes is one one opportunity for him to start shooting a little bit more. And maybe that's today, two teams who played each other just not that long or played each other enough times. I feel like maybe Kleber's a guy that gets open a bit more because they dedicate more attention to Luka or to Porzingis, whatever the case may be. Another guy who projects pretty well as value, Eric, is going to be Tim Hardaway Jr. And the spot for Tim Hardaway Jr., I honestly don't mind him either. I think relative to his price point on DK, I think he looks pretty well priced on FanDuel. Let me double check this because I don't actually know if I got to him on FanDuel, but I think on FanDuel it's a similar story. And THJ to me, one of those guys.
He's the second best play for sure at 4,200 over there.
Yeah. So 4,200 shooting guard eligibility. He's going to be the third highest on shooting guard. It looks like on FanDuel. I think Hardaway Jr. is a play that I like a lot for the night slate, even though I'm never comfortable saying that out loud. THJ, one of my least favorite players generally over the years, but how are you feeling about him here? Same thing I think applies to what you talked about. No DFS, a lot of guys out of this rotation. I think that benefits Tim Hardaway Jr. enough where Awesemo has been for 33 minutes. And I think that's good enough for me to get there pretty heavy.
I have him for 36. Again, this is a situation, him and Kleber, like there's just no replicant that they're going to be able to bring off the court. James Johnson was a guy who was able to eat up some 4 in small ball. They could go Kleber and then Porzingis would slide over. They could bring Boban in for a couple minutes. There are some paths for different things that they can do against Portland, but against Canner, against Covington in those small ball lineups, my guess is it becomes Kleber. It becomes a lot more of him. So I'm jamming him. And then same kind of point goes for Tim Hardaway Jr., a guy who can slide over and play the 3. There's really no issue there. Played 36 minutes, DFS being out. That's just a gob of minutes. DFS is just a guy like Kleber who just eats these minutes in such a way. Now that becomes Tim Hardaway Jr., despite his defensive inefficiencies from time to time, a guy that is going to be out there. He likes to chuck in the past. Hasn't really necessarily found his footing yet with this team. I'm expecting Dallas, though. Talking with Rinpack a lot, he's been bullish on going towards Dallas here in these later stages of the year. Thinks that they're going to make a push. You have this play-in tournament. You have all these other things, these avenues. Teams aren't hitting the panic button the way that they might have before. So Tim Hardaway Jr., they're going to get involved. He's going to get more involved as they're going along. We've seen 18% usage, 20% usage, 22. There was that game against Oklahoma City where he spiked up to 33%. So it's in the range of outcomes for him to go out, for him to go chuck, and we know he's going to play a large allotment of minutes.
Yep. No, I agree. I think Dallas, Vegas seems to be buying into 4.1 more points in their season average this year for this game tonight being projected by Vegas with their 115.5 implied total. So I think in the spot going against Portland, whose defense is really honestly right there in terms of being just as bad as Sacramento. Sacramento has that 116.6 defensive efficiency rating. Portland's at 114.2. So they just play a little slower. That covers up some of those warts, but they are as bad as defense as you're going to find in the league. I'm with you. I think THJ, Kleber, these are plays also that for the showdown slate on DraftKings and on FanDuel, the single game, these are guys that I think are very valuable tonight because I think there's room for a lot of people to get here. It's because of the situation with playing Portland. And now we're at about the halfway point of the show, which I think we would all call money time. And I'm going to flip my hat and give you guys this little preview here of our ownership projections. There we go. Awesemo.com/join. Chris, everybody gets to the trade here. They know I need a register sound effect or else I'm going to diva out. You're the top 5, though. And the update that we got on this was 1 hour ago. With top 5 on DraftKings, Luka Doncic, number 1 at 50%. And of course, you can always get these ownership projections, every single player on the slate at Awesemo.com/join. Number 1's Luka, that rounded up 50%. Number 2, Tim Hardaway Jr. at 47%. Number 3, Chris Paul at 46%. Number 4, Mikal Bridges at another 46%. And number 5, Devin Booker at 45%. Eric, we have enough time here, so I'll ask you, does any of these stand out to you as not being worthwhile? Because in every slate for me, it's Mikal Bridges, and it's Mikal Bridges again. And I don't get why people keep going there so heavy, but God bless you guys if it works out.
Yeah, it worked out yesterday for those point chasers. Those are, well, not even point chasers. You had 21.6. He put up 40 yesterday on FanDuel. I saw that. That was the really gross, disturbing part of it. But it's Mikal Bridges for me there too. I want to go lighter. 5,200 is kind of like no man's land on this slate. I don't want to get caught there. I think getting to like a Juancho Hernan-Gomez at the complete min at 25.8%, something that I want to be able to do. Like going down a little bit further to like some of these guys closer to the mid, Naz Reid even, who I hate at center on FanDuel, but wouldn't mind playing it like a power forward or a center position on DraftKings. He's got ownership in the teens. Like take some shots on some guys further down here because Mikal Bridges, he is so dependent on things just kind of breaking his way. Again, I just made all the points about having a crazy allotment of minutes. And I think all of that applies to Mikal Bridges, but we've only seen 33, 26, 31. And he's not that much more productive than a Kleber. He's definitely not more productive historically than a Tim Hardaway Jr. I would rather be on the side of both of them, even on DraftKings, and kind of go that direction. 44% is just too much for me to handle.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page with that one. And people are asking who would be the alternatives to go to Mikal Bridges. I think playing Tim Hardaway Jr. at small forward would be the move that I would like, and then just play Devin. I mean, well, I don't give away my whole lineup for the late slate, but I think that
Devin Booker, Cameron Payne. Yeah, no.
there's better plays at shooting guard. I think that you can then get there if you use THJ at small forward. And obviously, now that we're talking so much about Tim Hardaway Jr. is going to be terrible today. That's the nature of how these things go. But still, top 5 on FanDuel. Let's go over there. We're number 1, Luka Doncic at 75%. Number 2, Mikal Bridges again at 69%. They're not so nice, and it's Mikal Bridges. Number 3, Kristaps Porzingis, rounded up 68%. Devin Booker, exact same number, 68% for him too on FanDuel. And number 5, Karl Anthony Towns at 53%. And it's different on FanDuel, Eric. So I feel like we have to, give that caveat here where I think on DraftKings, you can make an easy move. On FanDuel, if you're not playing Mikal Bridges, you're playing Josh Richardson, you're playing Carmelo Anthony, you're playing Derrick Jones Jr., who had a game yesterday that I think will not be repeated today. Jake Layman, it is very bad on FanDuel at small forward. So are you more open to Mikal on that site?
Yeah, I am, but I'm also making the decision not to play him. It's kind of just a personal preference. Again, like that's part of playing a 2-game slate is that you can take really, really aggressive stances. If you're not playing, I'm not playing 150 lineups in that event. Like I'm playing, a manageable number of events or a manageable number of lineups that I can handle while we're on the show. Bridges, yeah, 4,900. He's going to jump off the page on FanDuel. He is exponentially the best play point per dollar at that position. But there are routes that I can get Lillard, that I can get Doncic in the same lineup with Towns, and it requires going down to Nader. It requires going to an Okogie, who I don't even want to play, period, whatsoever. But I'm going to click that button just to get a different lineup construction. And if he gets to 10, awesome, sweet. And then Josh Richardson, 5,200, paying up a little bit more, has a possibility of getting those minutes extended. I mean, they're going to be in the 30s. We know that in any kind of a close game. Let's go that direction rather than eating a dude who's going to be owned in 2/3 of the lineups. If you're only playing like a set number, if I were playing 150, of course I'm going to have quite a bit, but I'm playing like 20, and I don't want to put him in any of those lineups. I want to try to give myself the best chance to win. And I think being light on him the day after he went for 40, when we've seen 18 and 21 in those 2 games previous, seems like the way to maybe do it.
Yep, no, I agree. I think the ceiling is not quite as high. And then that was a bit of an outlier game too, where Minnesota was leading for so much of the game. So they just had to really dig their way out by having Mikal Bridges get some corner threes, which are one of his favorite shots in his entire arsenal. But I agree. I think that if you are, I get the projections and, the positionality on FanDuel is a core thing. And I would also agree too, that if you're playing 150, it's going to be unavoidable to get Mikal. But if you're playing 150, like 40% Mikal or 33% Mikal, or, if you are playing smaller slates, or smaller tournaments with less entries, then get to none. I think is completely reasonable there, and just hope you get an outlier day from one of the random small forwards. I think that's where FanDuel is a positive, where if you could fade a guy and one guy has at least a decent chance of popping up enough to pass him.
It's just such a big number, and it's a result of the position being garbage, and I get it, but I mean, you're getting 35 minutes of Josh Richardson for 300 more. You're getting a huge price savings going down to Nader or going to Layman, who's played well of late. I don't project him out that well, but again, you're getting a $1,400 price difference, gives you a whole different roster construction. I'm going to just avoid him and see what happens. Like, again, you have the capability of making more aggressive stances in this place. If I were making 150, I would certainly have more than 20, 30% Mikal Bridges no matter what, but I'm not. So I'm not going to do it.
Also, Wiggins now at 50 fantasy points.
Oh my. Back to rookie year Minnesota Timberwolves. Those were the days. Back when I was optimistic, I was all, bushy-eyed, rosy-tailed, just so happy about Andrew Wiggins. That was a short year, let me tell you.
Yeah, I'm shocked by this game by him. I mean, like, he's certainly has the ability to do more. We all know the pedigree coming in before LeBron shipped him out of Cleveland and whatever. But Keldon Johnson, he can have an outlier day. We've seen him be a volatile player, but Wiggins feels like I should be able to do this every night. He just doesn't for whatever reason.
Yeah, he's obviously the pedigree, the number one pick coming out of Kansas, got swapped to LeBron and said, I want Kevin Love. And they made the move to get him flopped over to Minnesota. I was really, really happy about it at the time. I thought it was a great move for us. Kevin Love wasn't going to win us anything as a number one. And Andrew Wiggins coming out of Canada felt like the guy who could maybe do that. Didn't necessarily develop, but he's had glimpses. And I have my biggest DFS win of all time. Andrew Wiggins was in the lineup. So I will never like completely say that he's the worst, but he's been kind of the worst of late.
And we talked about giving the ownership for the showdown as well. And this one is coming at the same lock time as the night slate. So if you want to get those lineups in, you have to do them right now pretty much. But on DraftKings, top 5, Luka Doncic, this is the overall ownership, 98% for Luka. Kristaps Porzingis, number 2 at 63%. Damian Lillard, number 3 at 60%. Number 4, Tim Hardaway Jr. on DraftKings at 45%. And Enes Kanter, number 5 at 42%. Actually, I will just do this real fast, Eric. But for this top 5 for just the showdown with Dallas and Portland, with Luka, Porzingis, Lillard, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Kanter, does any of those 5 stand out as being less worthwhile to you? I like all these guys. Kanter would be the one that I think on a projection basis I'd have a harder time getting to.
Yeah, I haven't really thought too much about it here. Let me pull up the showdown sheet. Yeah, I would have a tough time getting up top to that. I'm probably going to go, I don't know. I think that there's enough value that exists between like the Richardson tier. I'm probably going to be paying all the way up for the studs. And that seems like the cop-out answer. They are the highest projected guys. If I were going to go to some of these, like a guy like Kanter, you said Kanter's the guy you're the lightest on?
Yeah, I mean, I would think just on his price point for DK that he's
8K
guy.
is
like,
a big number.
Lillard, I think you could play him, but I normally would rather play Lillard if I could.
I mean, he got up to 34 minutes, but we've seen 27 and 26 there as well. This is a matchup where there's not going to be like a true 5 playing. We've got the starting lineup. Porzingis is a 4/5. He's going to make Kanter play some defense. I hope. I think Porzingis is going to start rebounding and playing significantly better than we've seen of late. Unless they move him. We got the deadline. Can't wait for next week. That's going to be something to look forward to for everybody. But yeah, I think Kanter, I would probably be the lightest on. McCollum's not even remotely interesting to me whatsoever. I'm not going to have any on that showdown. And then, yeah, Porzingis, Doncic, Lillard are so substantially better plays than anybody else. And you have so much cheap Dallas value that you can mix and match. I'm going to kind of go that path.
And on FanDuel, the top 5, Luka Doncic, 99% ownership expected across all the positions. Damian Lillard, number 2 at 73. Kristaps Porzingis, number 4 at 50. Maxi Cleaver, number 3 was Porzingis. Number 4 is Cleaver at 36. And number 5 is Jalen Brunson at 31%. And I'm sure that makes some sense within the FanDuel single game construct, which I did not look at all today, to be clear. I'm just reading the ownership. But Brunson seems like someone you could move away from. I get that Tim Hardaway Jr. is a little more expensive for the single game here. He's 10.5, but yeah, you got to find some way to move away from Brunson, I would think.
I'm worried about the minutes so much. We've just seen them kind of come crashing down of late. It's a very, very thin play. It can obviously work out with the absence of other guys, but DFS affects more the 3-4-5 range, a little bit of Tim Hardaway to give him a little boost too. They've just kind of like weeded out Brunson in so many different paths, like in so many different game scripts. He's not even getting blowout run. So they value him to some extent, but not enough to play him when meaningful minutes, like in an actual close game. It's kind of the worst of both situations. I would rather take shots elsewhere. Like, I think I would honestly, for ownership, rather go to Trey Burke and hope for a blowout, go way, way cheaper and avoid a guy who wouldn't get that blowout run like Brunson.
There's a comment in the YouTube chat real fast. Arcathels is saying, I'm going to get different and play Brunson instead of Hardaway. For the FanDuel, if you're talking the FanDuel single game, Brunson's going to be higher owned than Hardaway because he's cheaper. So keep that in mind. Definitely, if you were playing Brunson instead of Hardaway for the FanDuel night slate, that is one thing there. But just want to make sure that we get that distinction out in case anybody gets confused. Jacob Kimball saying, I don't know if you touted Vanderbilt today, but ask Eric if it's Vanderbilt night. Did you? Is that what that was?
It was so bad. It was by far the worst take that I have had on any show in my life. I recommended playing Jared Vanderbilt yesterday. Did you see his box score by chance?
I assume he didn't get a lot of run because I know.
I just want you to guess how many minutes he played and what his fantasy point output was, just on the fly, just not knowing whatsoever. Guess
8 minutes and three fantasy points.
Wow, 7 minutes, 3 fantasy points. That's literally what it was.
I swear to God, I didn't even know that. I feel good.
You read minds?
I'm a wizard. My girlfriend loves Harry Potter. So
you're a wizard, Harry.
I've never read Harry Potter nor watched a movie, but
Dopey is a good himself. Oh no, I'm doing voices again. This is bad. This is the Kermit.
You gotta give me
everybody wanted me to do Kermit today, and I'm like, absolutely not. I do not buy it. Oh, Kermit defrogger. That's fine.
I think you're doing Kermit just by talking would be the
thanks.
The bit.
But, honestly, missed you. I missed these late slate shows
Muppet,
with you.
The most likable Muppet. I've always backed Kermit. I find it troublesome that he's in a toxic relationship with Miss Piggy, who's clearly abusive at times.
She is very, very difficult to handle. I'm not going to lie.
No,
there are words that we have for such thing. A high baggage might be one. She is definitely she's the diva. She is the Chris Spags of the Muppets. That's what it is.
That's true. If she doesn't get a cash register sound effect, she's going crazy. I guess that Jokic is having a bad day against Chicago, which kind of bums me out because he's in one of my higher dollar DraftKings lineups today. But yeah, that's going to happen sometimes. We'll take some questions now. We got some building up here in the chat. John Perez saying Trent or Hardaway. I think Trent's actually interesting on DK, not instead of Hardaway, but just as an addition to, because he's at a weird price point. I think he's actually at the price point you mentioned, Eric, that 5,200 one. It's not great. It's going to put you on Mikal Bridges and all those guys. But I think Trent is one I don't mind taking a flyer on. It's not one thing I've talked about in the past with some of these guys like Trent, like Covington, who get set up mostly for their 3-pointers or their 2-pointers, as the cases may be, that looking at the assisted 2s and 3s numbers that the opposing team gives up is one benchmark that I do like to look at, which I think on the show has given us some plays here. When you're trying to dig deep for things, you can use some of these stats a bit more than you would for a full slate. But in this spot, there are less assisted 2s and 3s for a guy like Trent. So that does give me a degree of pause. But I think in this situation, Eric, I wouldn't mind playing Trent just because nobody's going to be playing him on the DK slate. And I think the price point too, like it's not ugly. It's not a value play by any stretch, but I just feel like people won't be there and he can give you 20 fantasy points. So I don't think it kills you, but would you see any situation where you would go to Trent over Hardaway?
So this is not a peek behind the curtain by any means, but one of my favorite things to do in any like, so I mean, not in large field tournaments too, but I like building the optimal lineup and making a 1v1 swap. This is the perfect example of that. You get the exact same price point. You can get close to zeroing it out and you make that one swap and you are different. Like that's like the exact perfect example of that kind of process. Like it's so much easier to be able to cut your ownership, your total sum of ownership in a way that's organic rather than just plugging it in Fantasy Cruncher. Just simply build what you think the optimal is and find a 1v1 or a 2v2. And, you know, if you enter that in a tournament with like 1,000 people, 5,000 people, there's a very high chance that you are different enough to be able to win it solo just by making that swap.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting way to look at it too. And Gary Trent, we know the upside is there. And I think too, you know, maybe people playing Carmelo a bit more, that is one guy who could pull away. So I think there's some concept of leverage, but on its face though, Tim Hardaway Jr. just as a value play, I think does look better. So that's
also sort of... CJ McCollum's back, but he played 21 minutes. First of all, I'm shocked he is playing today. I'm shocked. Yeah. Like it makes no sense that you're going to take your number 2 and you're going to throw him out there on a back-to-back. I guess part of that is Portland and Dallas kind of needing to keep winning basketball games. That's just kind of where they're at. The West is ridiculous. And so you want to move yourself up as high as you possibly can. You want to be avoiding that play-in tournament if you can, but they're both in a situation where I doubt that they will. I want to get to a situation with Gary Trent where he has a 30-plus minutes upside because I can't see McCollum playing 25, 26 minutes the day after playing 21. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me if you're valuing your franchise number 2.
We got some questions here about the Wolves starting lineup, and we could talk about it a bit more. I'm actually going to see if there was a projection update to reflect it, because the minutes sometimes don't change that much, even when these guys do get bumped to the starting lineup, especially for a team like the Wolves, who just have so many dudes who can take away minutes. But the starting lineup for the Wolves is Rubio, Edwards, Okogie, McDaniels, and Towns. And Okogie's been a guy who has popped up for me entirely too much over the last few weeks. And I'm worried that if I give him a minutes bump, that he's going to pop up again. But let me see where Awesemo has him.
Are you worried that your model is broken by chance? It might just be broken if he's popping.
Well, it's just that certain guys who do a little bit of everything tend to get more of a boost, because if the team is in a shortfall of rebounds or assists or points, then it gives them out to whoever, it has the ability to get those stats, which is helpful more often than not, especially when I don't want to pull rate data or it just doesn't exist for limited sample sizes. But for guys like Okogie, yeah, I just have to mentally know, like, oh God, Josh Okogie's bad. Only Josh Okogie. Minutes wise, oh man, Okogie looks
hasn't eclipsed 24 once in the last 2 months. I'm just letting you know in case FYI. 3,500 is the most intriguing part about playing him on FanDuel. 3,200 is the most intriguing part about playing him on DraftKings. That's about where it stops. 0.6 fantasy point per minute producer on the year. If you watch the games in general, he sits in the corner on 90% of possessions. It is mind-blowing, the fact that he doesn't do anything. They don't even pass him the ball sometimes. It's kind of terrifying. So offensively, you're not going to get there. Can he run into some stats in 24 minutes? Sure. Anybody really can. I think I would rather, even just for a little bit more ownership, go to Juancho Hernangomez on DK for 200 less. I think there's at least some involvement that he can get in the game and in the flow of it. Oh man, yeah, just Okogie in general isn't a fun roster. I get why the play would be okay by you, and why your model isn't completely thrashing him, but no for me.
Yeah, I mean, I have Okogie with the 24 minutes. To be clear, this is not an impressive projection. I have him getting 16.3 fantasy points, which at 3,200 makes him more than a 5x value, which is an old school, antiquated kind of way of looking at NBA DFS. But
I remember 2015.
but it's still a benchmark though, to be like, this guy projects as in a playable value, and then you don't have to force it, or you don't have to use a standard. And
everybody knows what you mean. It's not some basic answer. It's everybody knows.
It's not like I'm thinking Josh Okogie is the smash play of the century. But I have that being 0.69 fantasy points per minute. I don't know why this number keeps coming up today, but nice. I have to say it every time.
Hey, Chad, I think he said Okogie's his favorite play on the late slate. That's what I heard. I didn't hear anything else. I just heard that you were planting your flag on Okogie Island.
The thing is that Okogie I now would project to be better than Juancho, which I don't love, but I think on the rate basis, on the minutes,
it's not like Juancho was going to start at any point, and being able to go down to a 3K dude who at least has some upside, put up 14 points last night in a close game, in a win, in fact, that's got to count for something. I don't know, man. Maybe one good game is reflected in the ownership. In fact, that's exactly what it is. But he's 200 less, and I've at least seen him get involved in the offense. Whereas I can't remember the last time I watched a Timberwolves game and was like, man, Okogie's really starting to turn it around. It's never happened.
I get 24 minutes is 24 minutes. I can't say, anything besides what the projection tells me, but it is a 24-minute projection for Josh Okogie. Right. A 25-minute projection for Jaden McDaniels. Is Jaden McDaniels in the mix for you at all then, with him, theoretically being secured some degree of run?
I mean, that's literally all I'm trying to do right now, because I already made the worst call of all time. Everything I'm doing is just deflecting off the fact that I recommended Jared Vanderbilt yesterday and said it with a straight face. But 22 minutes, 26 minutes, last time out, or 27, excuse me, there it is. Obviously, the usage is insanely low, but he can run into boards, had 2 steals and a block. Last game, I had 2 steals the game before it. Gets a little bit involved in the stock department, so he's going to at least be out there a little bit longer. 3,500 on FanDuel. I would definitely much rather go that route, obviously at a different position. 4,300 on DraftKings. He really, really does not project well for me. I think that might be thin. That's an example of going down to a guy who's 3K that gives me access to Doncic and Towns in the same lineup, rather than sitting in that mid-range where I'm forced to play like a Mikal Bridges to bridge the gap.
Yeah, I like the salary on Juancho. I get it. I have to say I'm going to swap Josh Okogie into my lineup just because
because then it's way more fun to make fun of me after the fact when he goes completely ham today. I'm so ready for him to put up 30 plus tonight. That's kind of the night it is, especially after Rashawn Holmes was my favorite center 4 slates in a row, and now tonight's the night he's going off. Yes.
Eric asking, how many minutes do we think Juancho Hernangomez gets? I think we just said about 18 minutes is the projection from Awesemo.
Yes.
So that's what I build my projections off of. That's what a lot of our guys on the staff do. So that's the projection that we got to
he
go
gets
with.
a hot hand approach. If he starts making shots, they give him a little extended run. If he doesn't, he basically plays 16 minutes. So it's actually a little bit more higher variance than that. Like 18 is a number I would be kind of shocked if he landed on. It's going to be more or it's going to be less.
Let's see. That stat line. I don't know what Ben P says. Some stat line is probably in my run sheet. No, it was not. I actually don't make a run sheet for these shows. Don't tell anybody, but I don't even under the even on the hush. But that's sorry, Ben P. I make one for the tip off though every day. That one gotta have that one's gotta be a tight 5 every single time. We got a couple questions here in the chat. Actually, people now tilting about Harden. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I did that earlier in the show. Cody Mayfield asking a Kogi or Bridges. So that's an interesting one. I think you got to take Bridges on that one, but I do like the value in getting away from Bridges just because he's going to be so highly owned. So I don't know. I'm playing a Kogi. I'm not playing Bridges. That's all I could say.
He gave me the one guy that I'm like hating at small forward and putting him next to the guy who is completely irrelevant, like a waste of space on a basketball floor. Yeah, it's Bridges in that spot. But again, 3,500 gives you a different lineup construction. I would much rather just do that than play a 67% owned Mikal Bridges on a FanDuel late slate.
Jacob asking Cantor or Ayton, I presume for FanDuel. And as Eric mentioned earlier, that is basically the one big choice you'll have to make at center today where they are the same price. And I would go Ayton here. I just think that today is the day to go to him. We had the nice Cancer day yesterday. I honestly didn't expect that to happen, given that Steven Adams has completely owned him every time he's playing him for years. And that was something that terrified me when I saw how much Cancer I had. But I would favor Ayton today, Eric. But how do you feel about it?
Yeah, right there with you. I think we talked a little bit at length. If you're joining late, just basically the whole reason is that Ayton's a guy who has expressed upside over 7K for a while. Cantor, his role is kind of changing a little bit now that you get CJ McCollum and his usage back into the mix. So it's just simply a product of the slate that we're going to go to the Ayton direction. It's identical ownership on both. And I just see a little bit more path for Ayton to have a big upside. And you don't even need him to have like big upside in a 2-game slate. He just has to beat Cantor straight up. And so that's kind of the other question is, if you're asking me 50-50, how many times does he beat Cantor? I would say more than 50% in this spot. So that makes me lean on that side of it.
We've got some other questions about Boban now. Eric Gilbert asking, should I throw a Boban in one of 20 lineups? I don't hate it. Same thing for the showdown too, because this does seem like the kind of spot where you can get away for playing Boban for a few minutes, especially if Portland starts hot and then they're trying to dig out of it, which I think is normally just the way that Boban gets minutes. And without Willie Cauley-Stein, it's possible. That said, I think Dwight Powell getting a few more minutes seems more likely. I don't think Dwight Powell's a good play. He's been legitimately awful this year, 0.75 fantasy points per minute, and he's been more productive in previous years. And I think it seems every season, maybe the injury is catching up with him, just getting worse in his fantasy performance every year. But I would rather have Powell for the showdown at 1,000 than go into Boban. I wouldn't play Boban if you're playing just one lineup. But Eric, if you're playing a max 20, would you get to one lineup with Boban? I don't think that's crazy, even though it's not. You just got to be willing to eat that lineup.
I would rather go Powell between the two of them. And that sounds stupid, but it just is a situation where we've had 5 DNP CDs in the last 6 for Boban, whereas Powell's at least seen the floor in some of those situations at the exact same price. The reason that you're doing it, you're basically hoping 1, Cat fails, 2, Ayton and Cantor both fail in some regard, 3, that somehow Boban gets some kind of run to be over 10 minutes, and then he would be, or even like if he got 5 minutes, to run and put up 10 fantasy points, you're hoping that ends up being the optimal build because it allows you to get other things into your lineup. So you can plug in X 3,500 person because Boban has no reason to think that he's going to see the floor for more than 5 or 6 minutes unless there's a complete blowout and they bring him in for the fourth quarter. That's the only situation in which you do it. And I can't see that being something I want to build for on this slate. So 0 out of 20 is my answer.
Okay. I'm a little more inclined to take the 1. I think, especially if we're talking DraftKings with the 3K there. And
sure.
But I would have like 1 Powell or, however much Powell, maybe a little bit more Powell than that. And then try to get 1 Boban out of those Powell constructs there, where I just think it's worth the flyer, but I don't think it's secured at all. You just got to be willing to accept the fact that lineup might have 1-0 in it. Is Porzingis a must is a question that we're getting in chat too. I don't think he's a must. I think this is one day. I'm normally pretty down on Porzingis, but I think he projects decently well on DraftKings. I don't mind him there. On FanDuel, I don't know that I feel quite as strongly, but he's certainly in the mix. Like I wouldn't have any issue getting to a decent amount of him. So he's pretty highly owned. That's one thing that would spook me off. The power forward looks pretty ugly. So Porzingis, not a must, but maybe closer to a must on FanDuel. How do you feel about it?
Agreed. He's a must on FanDuel. On DraftKings, there's a lot of paths. I have one, so I've got two big lineups that I'm doing over there. One has him, one doesn't. And that's about where I'm at with it.
Derek Jones got extra minutes last game. Is he a pivot at small forward? I don't have the most confidence in Derek Jones' minutes. I honestly don't know why his minutes spiked. I know that today Awesemo has him for 22 again, which doesn't make him pop up meaningfully for me. And do you have any read on that, Eric? Do you feel like Derek Jones maybe gets more run, and which is not, by the way, for Derek Jones, not a sure thing that he's going to produce in those minutes. Still only a 0.71 fantasy point per minute guy this year.
In the starting lineup, performed okay, 17.3% usage in that game against the Pellies. This is not the Pellies, but it's equally as good in terms of pace and structure of like what I would be wanting to do. I could see him getting some extended run. It's not going to be a big Dallas lineup by any means. That's actually a pretty darn good call. I'm going to go. Yeah, I'm going to go up my exposure super quick. I like that take.
A lot of people like Boban. Melissa in the premium Slack saying that Bobans are boys. So people want to play Boban. I think that's sort of the one caveat that I have, or the one thing with me not wanting to play Boban, is that there's going to be enough people who still want to play him, even if he doesn't get a single minute. And at that point, it becomes a question of, is it even worth playing him in the first place? I still think he's worth the one lineup. But for me, if I'm playing just one lineup, not 1 out of 20, I think then you're probably not getting Boban. So
yeah, 1 out of 20, I'll allow it, but I'm not going to do it.
Alex asking in the YouTube chat, actually, Rubio and Porzingis, or Paul and Covington on FanDuel. I think that would be Rubio and Porzingis for me.
Same. Yeah. Anything in X with Porzingis would be good. And Rubio is somebody that we've seen with an upside of late, extended minutes. McLaughlin's still out. Fire it up.
You're the West Rich in the YouTube chat asking Boban or Doncic. I think, if you really want to get contrarian and leave that 8K on the table, going to Boban might be the move. That's the one way you could play Boban today, is if you're fading Luka and you just leave that 8K on the table and play Boban instead.
Yeah,
sarcastically,
sure.
To be clear.
No.
It's gonna be like one of those things where like some of Greg's guys recently who get obsessed and come into the chat and be like, "You said play Boban over Luka. You said it seriously."
Where does he find these people?
I don't know.
He finds them. He's like honey. He is honey. Yeah, it's all right. I've never got a mean tweet in my life.
And I just get it now in the YouTube chat. People don't tweet me anything angry. They just like say weird comments. Today was a guy being like positively sarcastic in a way where I think he was trying to get burns on me. Like, Spags, you're so great at DFS. You must be winning money every night. And I was like, thanks. I'm on a good run. Like I'm doing well. I'm not Awesemo. That's why I'm not Rinpack either. Like none of, that's. Or dude, Josh could have been Rinpack yesterday until he lost.
What's so annoying is Rinpack doesn't even like text me anymore. Like before it was like, hey, I had a great night, or like different stuff. Yesterday, not a peep, not a word. Do you know how tilting it is to find out from somebody else how your buddy's doing in DFS? Like that he doesn't, like it didn't even pause for celebration. And it was like, would have been the best night of the year for me by a lot.
You just got to go to the Moto Blinders ranking page to see all of Rinpack's latest exploits.
Yeah, Moto Blinders is quite the place. Yeah, let me tell you.
Sonasakith Serpanya, if this is a real name, or I hope I got close. If it's a fake name, then it doesn't matter. Okogie or Reed is the question. You know where I'm going on this one, Eric. It's Team Okogie. Ride or die with Josh Okogie tonight.
This show took a turn. I'm not okay with this. We are not recommending Okogie. Yeah, Naz Reid. Yeah, jam Naz Reid before. Oh man, this slate is so bad. It's good. Like honestly, I am excited to watch him just completely crash today. Oh
he's gonna be terrible.
This is not uploading for me. This is great. I actually have a sweat of getting these lineups in.
Well, let's see if Eric dies on screen. It in. One more time to close out the week. You got it.
I see what you did there. I'm trying to figure out 42. Okay.
I didn't even mean it the way that you took that, but yeah, that was a good burn.
I know. It was perfect. It was honestly absolutely perfect. You are something I am never going to be upset with. I promise.
Is 80% Rubio on DK too much? I would say so. I don't think Rubio has been a guy I've been hot on recently. I don't think he projects fantastically today on DK.
Yep. Agreed.
Fine. Like he's in the mix. He's fine. He's not 70% feels a little bit lofty. And we're basically locked now. So Eric, I think we're running it back tomorrow for the Saturday deeper dive, if I'm not mistaken.
We might be. That's a thing we might be doing.
Okay, is Eric? Let's just make sure. Let's see Eric get these lineups in. Go, Eric. Go, Eric. Go. You can do it. You can do it. That's all the chanting I had. That's all the cheering. You did it, yeah.
Oh, wow. That was something else. It kept saying, okay, so I was getting like CSV error, and I couldn't figure out what was going on because I had done all my late swap stuff, and the thing wouldn't click through. Mikey, that was actually a sweat. That was fun. That was the sweat and late swap and sweat right there.
Yeah, we're not sweating tournament wins here. We're just sweating getting our lineups in and not losing.
Yeah, this is the 101 show. If you want to watch the 401 show, tune into Alex Baker on the Awesemo live stream.
Well, either way, we're glad we had a positive note here. Follow at Eric Lindquist, and Eric, give him the plugs for whatever you want here. I believe you are in the deeper dive with me tomorrow for the Saturday show. It's you and Ryan rotating there. I just get swapped around with the
we'll see who ends up there. We'll see what ends up happening. But we got that. I've got the Slate Starter podcast that I do with Rimpak. That's Sunday through Thursday night. Comes out Monday through Friday. I've got the Slate Starter article, which I put out every single night as well. Gives you a glimpse of what's coming down the pipeline. Right, the Yahoo article on Fridays. Doing the tip-off show with you and Kayla. Absolute blast. Absolutely loving the opportunities we've been that we've had to be able to work together. Been doing some deeper dives with Adam. Now we got Lofty back, which is great. And then obviously the Live Before Lock show. Got to host today with Terry for the first time. So you'll see me a smattering of different places. Also catch PGA as I just joined up with that for Mondays. We're doing a 3-man booth there, getting an opportunity to talk with Ben Rosso a little golf. Good times had by all.
There you go. So watch all of Eric's content. Going to be appearing on more and more things here for Awesemo, and come back tomorrow for the Saturday deeper dive. I was going to say Slate Star. I would never be caught dead on that Slate Star. On the Saturday deeper dive. I enjoy that one a bunch. So I'll see you guys then. Enjoy your nights and good luck.